Good afternoon, everybody. It is May 5th, Wednesday at 3 o'clock p.m., which means it's time for Women in Business. Thank you all for joining me today. I really appreciate y'all being here. What we're going to talk about today is something that was kind of inspired by something that happened earlier in the week. And the title of this little talk is Self-Motivation, Facing Fears, Finding Faith, and Foiling Fallacies, which is, yes, I know, a lot of alliteration and F words, but I felt like it was something that I wanted to talk about for a lot of reasons. And my experience earlier in the week just kind of made it a little more relevant. So I thought, okay, let's start with that. So, my experience earlier in the week was this. On, I think, Monday night or Tuesday morning, I was looking for an idea for this show. And I posted a post in the Women in Garment Decoration group and basically said, hey, what do y'all want me to talk about? I'm looking for an idea. Now, Lisa Shaw was very nice and gave me 3 or 4 ideas, and a few people liked the post. But when you post something like that, what you really want is everybody to go, oh my God, I've been waiting for this question. I totally need you to talk about this. My life will not be complete if you don't talk about this particular subject. I'll be hanging on your every word on Wednesday. And of course, that didn't happen because people have lives and, reality is a little different than what's in my head. But when you don't get that response, if it's something that you're hoping for, what starts happening, at least in my head, is the little gremlins or demons or whatever you want to call them come out and play. And the little tape starts running in my head that nobody cares about this show. Nobody's going to watch this show. Nobody cares what you have to say. Nobody cares about you, blah, blah. Why do you think that anybody's going to want to listen to what you have to say? You have self-talk similar to this, I'm sure, in your own head. And that started me thinking because I thought, I cannot be the only one who does this kind of thing, who runs into these problems. So the first thing that I want to talk about when you're dealing with self-motivation and dealing with the lizard brain in your head that's telling you that, nobody cares and nobody's interested and you're not any good at this anyway, or whatever your particular self-talk is ask yourself, is it true? And it's a very simple question, really, but it's a very complicated question as well. Because no, I know realistically that there are people that care what I have to say. They've demonstrated that. I know that there are people who make time to watch this show every week, and I'm probably going to say hello to several of them in just a minute. And I know that even if nobody else cares what I have to say, to me, it's worth it to do this, to put something good out into the world. So I don't necessarily do it so that everybody will watch me and say, wow, you're amazing at this, even though, don't get me wrong, that's lovely. And if you would like to say that, you're more than welcome to do so. But in my head are all these negative tapes that have been built over the years from various experiences or from self-esteem issues that I had when I was younger or whatever it is. And so immediately when something happens that doesn't go in a way that I've built it up in my head that I'd like it to go, or when I don't get the response that I'd like to something that I put out there, then the little tapes in my head start running and they start going, nobody cares. Nobody's interested in this. Why would you think anybody would care what you have to say? Blah, blah, blah. And like I said, I am sure I am not alone in this. But when that happens, I have learned to stop myself. Because there used to be a time when I would listen to these little tapes or these little voices and I would go, okay, well, yeah, I'm just going to give up. I'm going to quit doing this. I'm going to just, nobody cares. Nobody's interested, blah. And that was me not having faith in myself and my abilities and me having expectations of, I'm going to go from 1 viewer to 5 million in like 2 minutes, because unrealistic expectations were a big feature of my life at one point in my life. So I started backing off and going, okay, is this true? is what my mind is telling me, is what's actually happened jibing with what I'm telling myself? Is the fact that, not many people commented when I asked the question really an indication of how many people are interested? Or does it mean that people have lives and jobs and kids and husbands and commitments, and maybe they don't have huge amounts of time to devote to thinking about what I should talk about on any given Wednesday? This is not rocket science. But what a lot of people do is they go right to the negative, and then they just blindly accept the negative option as the truth. And so they end up getting discouraged, or they end up figuring that they don't need to bother doing whatever they're doing. And so they end up taking something out of the world that could be very valuable, or neglecting an opportunity that could be a really good one for them, or just simply letting themselves down. You have to believe in yourself before anyone else does. And if you don't, or if you have had a lot of experience growing up, or in your marriage, or in your relationships, or whatever it is, where people have been telling you negative things about yourself, you could have a lot of negative self-talk happening. And I don't really like the phrase self-talk, but it's the only one I can think of. So what you need to do is just really back it out and say, okay, I know from experience that there are these negative messages that'll run through my mind. So in this particular thing that's in front of me, is what my brain is telling me true? Is this accurate information that I am getting from my brain or my emotions or whatever it is? And a lot of times you're going to look at it and go, no, it's not true. And that's what happened to me. I had my moment of, well, nobody cares, nobody is interested, blah, blah, blah. Who am I to think that anybody would want to hear what I have to say? All that kind of stuff. And then I went, but wait, I have a pretty good reputation. I know that people listen to me and like to hear what I have to say. I also know, as I said, that people have lives and they're busy and they have other commitments. And maybe what I should talk about on any given Wednesday is not high on their list of priorities to deal with, which is not a wrong or a bad thing. It's just the reality of life. So I always will say, and this is kind of why I put this at the top of this talk, when the negative messages start coming at you, and they could be from your own brain, or they could be from someone else who says your idea won't work, you're not equipped to start a company, there's already too many screen printers or embroiderers in this area, another one's not going to do well, whatever it is. Do your own research, look at it yourself, figure out if it's true. And if it's true, then maybe you go, yeah, you're right. There are a lot of embroiderers here. Maybe this isn't the best idea. Or you might look at, doing a show and say, you know what? Maybe this isn't what I should be doing. Maybe there's a better way to make the connections that I want to make and get the information out there that I want to get out. Just because somebody says something negative, or you say something negative to yourself, it doesn't necessarily mean it isn't true. It just means that you need to really dissect it and kind of take the emotions out of it and just look at it from the perspective of, okay, for a given value of truth, is this accurate? Am I telling myself, or are other people telling me things that are accurate and true? And if they are, then you operate on that. If they're not, then you discard them and move on to the next thing. So that's basically what I wanted to start with. But part of my truth is that there are good people that are here. So I'm going to say hello to a few people. Hi, Cindy, and hello, Tanya, and Carolyn. Thank you for being here. And Gosta from Sweden. Hi, thank you. And Carolyn, wait, what? I'm not sure what that means, but and Tanya says, oh, mine too. And I'm assuming she means her brain says her negative things. tells her negative things. Cindy, you might have missed that post. That's another truth, that there were people who just simply didn't see the post. But like I said, when you're having a sad day or you're feeling a little bit lost, you can build it up into something that it absolutely isn't. And this is an example right there. And then Carolyn says, the monster is Godzilla some days in my brain. Yeah, Godzilla lives in my brain too. And lizard brain is what I call it, because, sometimes the negative self-talk is really, really loud. And it's much better than it used to be, and Carolyn also says, happened this morning at the town hall, and I had to step back and reevaluate what the person was saying to me. And yes, that's the thing. You have to step back and say, okay, am I really being told, am I really hearing what's being said? Does the person who's saying it really mean what they're talking about? And we'll talk about at the end of this talk something called the principle of charity, which if you've ever watched The Takedown with Eric Campbell, then you've already heard of this. But I think that applies directly to what you're saying here, Carolyn. And we have the dreaded Facebook user with a good pep talk. And I'm going to just tell you, if Facebook will not show your name, if you go to StreamYard.com/Facebook, you can give them permission to do that. But I appreciate you being here. And hello, Carla. And Eric. Oh, Eric's here. It's hard not to act from that place. I know it's a constant for me too. And I totally stole Principle of Charity from you, Eric, but I'm talking about it today. And it is hard not to act from that place. And it's hard not to, a lot of the time, go to the negative, because you get in your own head, and it's easier a lot of the time, sadly, to believe the negative than it is to take the time to go, okay, what's the reality of this situation? So that's the first thing I want to talk about. Second thing I want to talk about is false expectations appearing real, which is my acronym for fear. Fear is a bugger, man. I mean, if you're afraid of something, you can find 4 million excuses why you shouldn't do it. Stepping out on that ledge and doing something that scares you can be the hardest thing you will ever do in your life sometimes. And I've watched it, because I've had some people do this show or do other things with me who are terrified of being on camera. And I, at one point, was myself terrified of being on camera. Not that you can tell that now, but there was a time. And I still have my moments where I don't love it, and it's not, my fear was always more appearance related, that I was going to get on camera and people were going to go, who's that gargoyle who's talking? Oh my, why are they letting that woman be on camera? She should have a veil and a mask and I don't know what. But the thing about fear is that you never make anything better by being afraid of it. And a lot of times, once you go through whatever the experience is, you realize that you were scared of things that were false expectations. Now, expectations, at some point, I think I probably will do a show just on expectations, because one of the things I have learned is it's better not to have any. Don't assume that anything's going to happen or that someone's going to behave a certain way or any of that. Just operate with whatever's in front of you, because the problem with expectations, especially false ones, is then they build up this whole barrier to you being able to do anything, because you're so scared of this thing that probably isn't even real. It's like when you're a little kid, and I remember this because I was a very imaginative little kid, and I was absolutely convinced that if the closet doors on my closet in my bedroom were not entirely closed, there was a monster that was going to come out and get me. And I could not go to sleep until those doors were totally closed. But the trick was, once I was in bed, if the doors weren't closed, I couldn't get out of bed and go close them, because then the monster would get me. So I'd have to convince one of my parents to come in and close the door, which at first they kind of played along with. And then after a while, they're like, seriously, we have to get up and come do this? Seriously? And I mean, I wasn't a very old kid. I was probably 5, 6, something like that. But I was absolutely convinced. And obviously, there was no monster in my closet. If I had gone to shut the door, the monster would not have grabbed me and pulled me into the closet. And I knew rationally that there was nothing in the closet that was going to get me. But I was a little kid, and I was an imaginative little kid who read a lot of stories that I probably shouldn't have read far earlier than I should have read them. So I had this sort of horror show mentality. But that's the kind of thing. The monster in the closet, the monster under the bed, the people that you think are judging you, the people that you think don't care about what you're doing, 9 times out of 10, none of that stuff is real. But in your head, you've built it up to be real. And I want to check the comments here because I see we've got some more. And Lisa says, yes, fear can be such a hurdle. And Carolyn, this is, yes, sometimes it's okay to push a sister off the dock, like give them the shove to do what they are afraid to do. I'll agree with that to a certain degree. I think you have to respect if people are genuinely really, really scared of something, but I don't think there's anything wrong with encouraging someone to try something or offering them a supportive environment, which is one of the things that I've done with this show for some people who are a little more concerned about being on camera, is come talk to me and we'll just have a chat. And yeah, it'll be on camera, but it doesn't feel as much like being on camera. And I'll be there to support you if you get scared or you get lost or you forget what you wanted to say. I can smooth that over. So I can make it a smoother and more comfortable experience. But again, really, what do you think's going to happen if you're on camera? What are your false expectations appearing real? What do you think is going to, do you think people will point and laugh? Do you think everybody in the comments is going to say, oh my God, who is that person? It's the same thing with, for years, I had a fear of public speaking. You wouldn't know it now, but because I've done seminars for years and all sorts of things. But back in the day, when I had less self-esteem and I was feeling pretty bad about myself, getting up and talking in front of people was the scariest damn thing I could ever, ever, ever think of. And the first time, and I've told this story in other places, but the first time I did a seminar for DAX, I was so thankful there was a podium in the room that I could stand in front of, because I was holding onto the podium almost the entire time because my legs were so weak. And I really literally did expect that someone was going to stand up in the middle of the seminar and go, who the hell are you and why did they ever bring you here? Didn't happen. Got actually very good ratings for that seminar and have gotten very good notices for subsequent seminars. So I actually turned out to be good at it. But I had to get through the false expectation of people going, she doesn't know anything, she sucks at this, she's horrible, to get to the part where I figured out I was good at it. So that's the thing that I think people need to remember about fear that we often don't, is on the other side of it could be things that are really beneficial to you. So sometimes you have to walk through it. Now, obviously, there's different kinds of fear. If you're walking down the road and a dog that's frothing at the mouth comes and starts growling and barking at you, that's one kind of fear. If you're asked to be on camera for somebody's podcast or video cast, that's a different kind of fear. So, I mean, obviously, fear has to be evaluated based on the consequences and what the circumstances are. But a lot of times we use fear because we're scared of doing something. And so we make the fear a barrier instead of going, maybe I'm scared because this is a challenge I need to take. So you have to parse that out for yourself. I'm not going to say I know the rules in every situation and how you should always handle it, because everybody has to handle it in the way that suits themselves best. But just remember, false expectations appearing real, and take that extra moment to really look at why you're scared and what might be on the other side of being scared. So, the next thing I want to talk about is belief in yourself and others. And these are two separate things. You can believe that other people will help you and are good, and totally believe that you're not worth help. You can believe that good things can happen to other people, but not to you. This is one I struggle with a lot, that I don't deserve good things, or that my karma or life or whatever it is not set up for good things to happen to me. It's very hard for me to trust in the benevolence of the universe, I guess, is what I want to say. And, that's something that I know. And so I have to look at how I react to things based on the fact that I know this. But belief in yourself is where everything has to start. You have to believe that you can accomplish whatever it is that you want to accomplish. But even before that, you have to believe you're worth the effort, and not other people's effort, your own effort. Because there may be damage that you need to fix. There may be coping mechanisms that you need to unlearn. There may be, old scripts, like I said, running in your head that you have to figure out how to deprogram so you don't hear those things anymore. There may be a mountain of, negative criticism and false assessments of you and your abilities that you have to kind of get over and unlearn. Because, unfortunately, parents and other people in our lives aren't always aware or capable of being positive reinforcement. It happens. So you may have some scars from that you have to deal with. So you have to start with believing in yourself. That's the first place you have to start. Because if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to have the motivation to take the steps you need to take to get to where you want to go. That's just reality. And it's, I'm not going to lie. I'm 52 now. I had to think about that. That's a little sad. I'm 52 now. I'm still struggling with that. And I probably didn't really get a good solid belief in myself until I was in my 40s. So I understand that that's a tough thing to do. But if you don't believe in you, it's a cliche, but it's true. If you don't believe in you, nobody else is going to believe in you. So you need to figure out how to get that belief in yourself. And then the other half of this is believing in others. And again, this is something that if you've had experiences where people haven't treated you well, it's tough to do, because your default setting is kind of, what's this person want? Or why is this person being nice to me? Or whatever it is. So there's, a lot of this can be, like I said, the result of damage that could come from any number of places. Some of it could just be self-esteem issues. And, self-esteem, and I think people don't understand this necessarily, self-esteem can also impact your belief in others. Because if you don't think you're worth it, then you're kind of skeptical and critical of people who might want to treat you well or help you. And the hard thing of not having a belief in others is then when opportunities come your way, you maybe won't seize them as much as eagerly or as readily as you would if you had a strong belief in yourself. So these two things kind of tie together. And like I said, belief is a tough one for me. I feel almost a little presumptuous talking about it because it's still one that I struggle with a little bit. But I'm learning. And that's the only thing that you can, that's the only thing that you can do, is just realize where your issues are and try to make them better. And let's see what we've got here in the comments. This is a good one. I do that and get imposter syndrome. Yes, imposter syndrome is a huge thing that comes from lack of belief in yourself and lack of belief in others because honestly, your mind can mess with you and start going, well, if these people think that you're all that, then they don't know what they're talking about. And it's like, but, if people, what, how do I put this the right way? I think what a lot of people don't understand is that when people give you their time and attention, when they listen to what you have to say, they're actually validating you and saying, you're worth it. And if your self-esteem is telling you I'm not, or if they really knew what I was like, they wouldn't, or if they knew what a mess my life was, or if they knew, these four things I did when I was 20, that, statute of limitations has certainly worn off on those. But you can always find a reason why you're not worth it. The challenge is to find a reason why you are and why you should believe in yourself. That's the challenge. That's the challenge I want to put out there for all of you. Tell me why you are. Tell me why you're worth believing. Tell me why it's worth believing that others would think you're worth it. All that, because belief is a funny thing. And I believed for any number of years that I wasn't worth it. And my life reflected that. And when I started believing that I was worth it, that I had something to say, that what I'd gone through had taught me things that maybe could be helpful to other people, everything in my life started changing. So that's all I can tell you. And like I said, I still struggle with this daily. Believing that good things can happen to me, believing that I'm worth it, is still something that I struggle with all the time. But I'm better yesterday. I'm better today than I was yesterday. I got that wrong. You know what I mean, though. So it's a daily thing, and you just have to work on it. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to go up here and hit the comments real quick and see if there's. Yes, Jean's totally right. Give yourself the same grace you extend to others. This is totally true. I can believe in everybody else from here to the sun and back, and I do. And I think, everyone I know is amazing and talented and has lots to give the world. So if I'm going to believe that about everybody else, then I got to believe it about me too. So yes, I like that. Give yourself the same grace you extend to others. That's a good one, Jean. I like that a lot. So the next thing I want to talk about is another thing that trips me up on occasion. And that's don't look at the whole mountain. And I tend to be a big thinker. I don't tend to think small. It's like if I start a group, I start thinking we have to have a blog and we need classes and I want swag and and if I go work for a trade show, we're going to have the biggest attendees ever, the biggest group of attendees ever, and I'm going to find all the best vendors and I'm going to sell the place out and it's going to be. And the problem with the way that I think is that it's very intimidating. And when you look at the size of the task that I set for myself, there are days when I'm just like, yeah, I'm just going back to bed and then I'm going to eat a bag of potato chips and some chocolate and then I'm going to play Plants vs. Zombies all day. That's what I'm going to do because everything else is too big and too hard and I don't want to do it. And I think a lot of people have this problem that instead of breaking their goal down into steps, so you take step one and it's like walking where you step the second rock and then the third rock and so on. That's the way you have to operate because if you look at the whole mountain, the mountain's going to fall on you and crush you because it's just too big. And if you aren't thinking big, that's a whole other problem. I mean, I will put my hand up, freely admit that I think big, probably too big, probably intimidatingly big sometimes. And why that is, for all that I say that I don't have faith in my skills, apparently I do, because I apparently think I can do almost anything except put stuff together. I can't do that. But I have learned over time that I have to back it out because I'll go from we're going to start a group to I need a website and I need a blog and I need merch and I need booths at trade shows and before we have 5 people in the group, I'm already exhausted and I want to go, have a nap. So segment it. Learn to just look at what's the first step and then what's the next step and then what's the next step. And if you just focus on the steps along the way, eventually you get to the top of the mountain, but you haven't blown your head apart by freaking yourself out over how tall the mountain was. So I love it that we're getting all these comments. I just adore you people for saying all this stuff to me. One of the most beautiful things about longtime friendships is that those people know all those things of you and still love you as you are. And I think that's very true. When you have someone who's known you a long time and watched you evolve and supported that evolution, definitely true. And Tanya says, thinking big is a J thing. I try to emulate it, but freeze. And I get that too. For some people, thinking big, and she clarifies, but I freeze. And I think a lot of that, Tanya, is probably because for you, thinking big becomes intimidating because you look at all the tasks, and I know some of your personal story, so I know some of the health issues and other things you're dealing with, and it's like, when you're dealing with all that stuff already, and then you go, let's do this big thing that's going to have 5 more parts and 100 more tasks. You just kind of want to go, yeah, well, I'll be in the hammock. Let me know how it goes, because it's intimidating. So break it down. You can dream big, but I guess the way I'd put it is dream big, but think small. Dream big about what you want to do, but when it comes to actually thinking about how you're going to do it, just think about the first little piece in front of you and do that, and then think about the next piece and do that, and then think about the next piece and do that. And if you keep just thinking about the stone that's in front of you as you cross the river, eventually you're going to get to the other side and you're not going to have wet pants. And you're going to be in a whole new place where you can do something new. So this is one that I have found has been really, really valuable for me because, like I said, I tend to think really big. And I would think so big that I would intimidate myself out of doing anything. And the other advantage to not looking at the whole mountain and just looking at the step in front of you is even if you don't get up the entire mountain and accomplish the big, humongous goal that you had, you're still going to take steps toward getting there. And that means you're still going to accomplish something. So accomplishing something is always better than nothing, as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to pop this out, pop back over to the comments for a moment. Thank you, Tanya. I'm glad that I got it. And Carolyn says, 90% of people think big, 10% do even one bit of the big. So be proud that you are the special 10%. And I think that's true. If you even get 10% of the big, you've still gotten further than a lot of people do. So she's right. Be proud of that you at least made an attempt. And if you get all the way to the top of the mountain and you create whatever the big thing is and you're really excited by that, that's amazing. But even if you only get halfway up the mountain, you still got partway up the mountain. And partway is better than sitting at the bottom going, gosh, I'd really like to do this, but the mountain's so high. So that's definitely something to think about. So the next thing I want to talk about is something that I hear a lot from people who had rough relationships with their families or their spouses or whatever it is. And that's be that person for yourself. And this is one that I had to learn too. Everybody, a lot of people will say if they have a rough relationship with their family or their social network isn't real big or their spouse isn't very interested in what they do, I don't have any support. And that's why I don't do things, because I don't have support. I don't have people telling me you can do it and giving me advice and, helping me out. And the reality is, not to be like grim, but we're all on our own, basically. I mean, you have friends and relatives, and you have spouses and siblings and all that stuff. But at the end, the only one that's going to support you and help you is you. If you're lucky, maybe you have a wide variety of people that help you and support you. Maybe you find groups on social media. Maybe you have a really supportive spouse or supportive parents or whatever it is. But if you don't have that, that doesn't give you a pass to not try to do things. It doesn't give you a pass to say, well, if I had people behind me, then I could try this thing, or I could start this company, or I could do this activity that I want to do, or whatever it is. Be that person for yourself. If there isn't anybody outside or in your friend circle or whatever that's cheering you on, that was harder to say than you would think. Be your own cheerleader. And it sounds lonely, I guess is the word I want to say. But at the same time, you can't depend on other people to continually be bolstering you up. You have to be able to do it yourself. You have to be. That's what self-motivation is. Self-motivation is doing things under your own power, basically. So you can't count on someone to tell you how to do it. You can't count on people to always be going, yay, we're so excited. You can't count on people to be interested. You can't really even count on people to be around necessarily all the time. If you're lucky, you have people who can do those things and will do those things for you. And with social media, it has made it easier in some senses to find communities, yay, and one of them would be Women in Garment Decoration, who will support you and help you. But you have to be that person for yourself first. You can't depend on external validation. You can't depend on always having someone to clap and say yay and tell you how wonderful you are. You have to be able to do that for yourself. Because if you can't, you're always going to be hostage to other people. And having dealt with people who need external validation all the time, I can tell you it's flippin' exhausting. And now I want to be clear here. I'm not saying don't be happy when someone tells you you do a good job. Don't look for feedback on things. Don't want people to be excited by whatever you're doing, because we're all social creatures. But underneath everything else, on the bedrock, if everybody else was taken away, be that supporter for yourself, because that's going to benefit you the most. And weirdly enough, once you learn how to support yourself, you're a much better supporter for other people too, because you can actually really give, because you're not looking for quid pro quo, so to speak. You just want to make other people better, because if you're surrounded by people who are being their best selves, then you're going to be your best self too. It's kind of the circle of life, Hakuna Matata, Lion King sort of thing, I guess. But let's see what people are saying now. Thank you, Tanya. We love you too. Tanya says she loves me and Carolyn. And yes, Cindy Spain, you're exactly right. Sometimes you have to encourage yourself, because that's the important thing. If you can't find it in you to encourage yourself to meet your goals, then how can you expect anybody else to take the time or to invest the time to be interested in what you're doing, or what you're working toward? You have to be able to encourage yourself. And sometimes you're the only one that's encouraging you. And that has to be okay. you can't use the fact that maybe you don't have a huge support system as a reason not to do things, because that doesn't benefit you and it deprives the world of whatever wonderful things that you could bring to it. And Carolyn says, that's what I love about your Friday post in Women in Garment Decoration, about an accomplishment for yourself. It's empowering to see people celebrate themselves. And I agree with this. And that's part of why that post started, is knowing, as I do, that sometimes it's hard to say I did something good, and I want acknowledgement of that. So every Friday we do a post where it's just basically, tell me something good that happened this week. Doesn't have to be business related. It could be, your kid learned to say the alphabet, or you went camping, or whatever it is. Something that made you happy. Put some positive energy out in the world. So the next thing I want to talk about here is what you're told isn't necessarily what's true. And this circles back to the truth thing that I was talking about earlier. Unfortunately, one of the things that you will encounter in this world is people who need to make other people feel small because they feel small. And it's a sad phenomenon, but it happens. Or people who are dealing with their own damage, and some of it slaps over their bowl and lands in yours. There are people who are trying to cope with their own set of circumstances and hurt other people unintentionally. It happens. But what needs to happen for you is, when you hear negative things about yourself, when you're told you can't start a business, or you're told that women aren't good at running businesses, or you're told that nobody would want to watch you if you did a podcast, or whatever it is, or, why are you wasting your time on this? Or, even things that people will say that they think they're being well-meaning, like, oh, well, you should really have a job with a steady paycheck because that's more secure. And they really think, they do, that they're saying something that's caring and loving and positive. And really what they're saying is, we don't think you can do it on your own. So you need someone to take care of you. My father, when I was growing up, told me often that my mother needed someone to take care of her because she couldn't take care of herself. Now, this was a woman who started out as the night nurse at the facility that she eventually ended up running. She worked her way up. She was very smart. She did all the mom stuff. She was a Girl Scout leader, PTA mom, ran the school talent show, all this kind of stuff. Very, very intelligent woman. I mean, she had her issues, but in my father's view, and what he told me about her, that he also was trying to tell me about me, was that I needed someone to take care of me. Now, one of the things about stuff like that is I tend to be very stubborn. So I probably have spent most of my life alone because I wanted to prove that I didn't need anyone to take care of me. So what you're told isn't necessarily what's true. You need to look at the messages that you're getting from the people around you, positive and negative, because there are also people who will try to blow you up and tell you that you're the greatest thing since sliced bread for reasons of their own. And they're not necessarily right either. So you need to look at what you're hearing and decide if it's true for you, and if it's accurate for you, and if it's something that you should take on board as part of your belief system. If it's not, don't. Because like I said, there are people out there, sadly, who need to make other people feel small. And the way they do that is by criticizing and being negative and telling you this just, because I mean well, or I love you, or whatever it is. And, that's kind of just the reality of life. So you have to keep a space in your head where you can analytically decide if what you're being told about yourself, about the world, about the possibilities of the world is true or not. And this is another one that I'm really discovering since I've been working with Applique Getaway, because this is a great group of people. Surround yourself with positive achievers. And again, sounds like a no-brainer, but for a lot of people, it isn't. A lot of people, they have a friend they've had forever who never could quite get their shit together, or they have, family members that they love, but they are making negative choices or whatever it is. And it sounds, I'm trying to think of how to put this the right way. It sounds kind of cold, but you have to realize that who is around you makes a difference in how you behave and what you achieve. So you want to surround yourself with people who are going to bring out the most positive version of you that you can find. And this isn't always possible. I mean, I'm not saying, dump your family members or your friends who have problems or whatever, but make a concerted effort to find a group of people that are operating at their highest level of positivity, that are really about what can we do to make things better, because there's enough people in the world who are trying to make things worse. So be on the side of the people that are trying to make things better. And one of the things I will say is, once you're surrounding yourself with positive people, you will discover a couple of things. First, the level of support you're getting will go up immeasurably. Second, you don't have to be small. And what I mean by that is, when you're working with people who have self-esteem issues of their own, or they have fears of their own, or they just need to make other people feel small, then you start to become small so you can get along. And I did this for years and years, where I knew I had talents and abilities, but I would kind of hide them or downplay them, or do things so that I wasn't intimidating. I have to say this. Being told I'm intimidating has been following me since probably when I was a teenager. Why that is, I don't know. But for a long time, I tried to be less than I was so that I wouldn't get hit with that label. Now I'm like, if you're intimidated by me, that's, I don't know why, number one, but I can't help that. I'm not going to be less so you'll be more comfortable. I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to do what I can do. I'm going to put the things out in the world that I can put out in the world that I think are going to be beneficial. There's no point of living a life where I'm not using the talents that I have. And I think we all need to be that way. There's no point in any of us living a life that isn't using our talents and our abilities, that isn't putting something good into the world. Because Lord knows there's enough people trying to put not good into the world, sadly. Tanya, I'm right there with you. Tanya says, people tell me I'm intimidating and I don't get it. I don't get it either. I never thought I was particularly intimidating, but I've been hearing it, like I said, since I was a teenager. I don't know why. I don't understand it, but I've kind of just made my peace with it, and it is what it is. I mean, this is me trying to be the best I can be. If that intimidates you, I'm sorry, but I gotta try and be the best I can be. So this is what I'm doing. The next thing I want to talk about is an Erin Montgomery special, but I think it's true. When you're dealing with self-motivation, you have to figure out why you're doing whatever it is you're doing. Because if you don't know why, it gets harder to keep things going when maybe you're not getting the support you want to get, or you're not getting the feedback you want to get, or whatever it is. Like, that was one of the things I did, going back to the story that I told at the beginning of this hour, when I was, I put the post up and I was waiting for everybody to go, oh, we're waiting for Wednesday so we can sit at your feet and learn all your wisdom. And people didn't do that. And so I really had to think, well, am I doing this so that people will sit at my feet and learn all my wisdom? Is that is that really why I don't know why my voice went all high there, but is that why I'm doing this show? Is that the goal of this? And no, the goal of why I do this is because when I started it, the world was a pretty scary place. There was a pandemic, there was political unrest, there was racial unrest, there was unrest of almost every kind. And I just felt I'm stuck here at home. What can I do? Okay, I can do this. I can do an hour a week where I try to either talk to interesting people or talk about something that I think is going to be beneficial. That I can do. And so I started doing it. Now, I'm not going to be disingenuous and say I never hoped that people would watch or think that it was good because, I'm human. Of course, I want people to watch and think it's good. I don't want to be talking to air. But that was not the why. The why was never, please watch and validate me. The why was, I think I have something to say that could be positive and helpful. And in a time when there's a lot that's negative, I want to be a positive force. And this is something I can do. And so that's basically why I did it. And let's see. Carolyn, it was always the best women in garment decoration booster there is. 810 women who are cheering for you. Join us. And just because she put that out there, let me see if I can find the URL for that. And I will put it up real quickly just because. There we go. Facebook groups, Women in Garment Decoration. There you go. So if you're not a member, please come join us. We'd love to have you. And thank you, Carolyn, for once again doing the promo work that I'm reluctant to do. I appreciate it. Whoops. Now see, I'll find your why. There we go. So the why can be a lot of things. The why can be I need to earn money. The why can be I have something to say. The why can even be I want people to think I'm cool. Just be clear on what your why is and know your purpose, because if you don't know your purpose, it's a lot harder to stay on track. It's a lot harder to stay motivated. That's all I'm going to say about that one. And then the last thing I want to talk about is Eric Campbell's principle of charity. And I love this because basically it kind of encapsulates most of what we've talked about here. And basically what the principle of charity is that in any situation, if you're having an argument, if you're having a discussion, if you're having an interaction with someone, you assume that they are acting for the highest good. You assume the most benevolent interpretation of whatever they're doing. I mean, obviously, if somebody's hitting you over the head, then maybe not. But, if you're having a discussion, if you're having an argument, if you're interacting with someone, you try to ascribe to them the most benevolent and positive intentions that you can. And what this does, Cindy King says, Christine, because of your show, so many people have learned about different groups. You keep me busy. Well, good. I'm glad that I'm keeping you busy. That's part of my goal. So the principle of charity is basically just entering into any interaction that you have with a positive viewpoint, with positive expectations. I mean, obviously, things won't always work out that way. But if you started off assuming the best, then you're going to be better off than if you go in assuming that everybody's out to get you or cheat you or hurt you or whatever your particular negative thought might be. So it really comes down to, it's an attitude thing. And, people talk about good attitudes or positive attitudes, but I will say this. When I was younger, in my early 20s, I had a really, really negative attitude. I mean, I was the dark cloud of doom, Darth Vader walking down the halls of the Death Star. I was just not. I thought that I'd gotten a raw deal in my childhood. A lot of bad stuff had happened to me. I didn't have much trust in people. I didn't have any trust in myself. I had low self-esteem, and I just assumed that if a storm cloud came over, I was going to get hit by lightning and hailed on. That was just how it was going to be. And I had a boss who finally sat me down and said, "You are the biggest bummer in the world to be around, and you need to fix it." And I resented it like hell at the time, but she was totally right. And I did learn to fix it. And it was an ongoing process over a couple of years, but I learned better. It was a hell of a lot of work. But the principle of charity was part of it because I started looking at events and people as though these things that were happening for the highest good. These people that were interacting in my life were interacting for the highest good. Now, that wasn't always true. I made my share of mistakes. I trusted some people I shouldn't have. That's part of life. But if you operate from the expectation that most people are good, that most situations that when you interact with someone else, they are working for the highest good they can conceive. Now, that doesn't mean they agree with you. That doesn't mean that they necessarily want what you want, but it means giving them the benefit of the doubt and assuming that they are working for whatever they see as the greatest good in the situation. And I love this principle. And Eric, like I said, Eric talks about this on the Take Up, and I enjoy it every time he talks about it because I think it's a very valuable little tool to have in your toolbox. And it's a valuable way to think about how things are happening in your life. So, principle of charity. That's all I'm going to say. And once again, I have talked for almost an hour. Every week when I start one of these, I go, yeah, this is the week I don't make an hour. This is the week it isn't going to happen. And then I look up at my little timer on the side of the screen here and yep, we're almost there. So I don't know. Strangely enough, I feel better because like I said, this whole thing started because of me thinking, listening to the negative self-talk in my head and thinking that nobody cared about what I was doing, which was totally untrue. And I knew that, but sometimes you have to put it out there and sometimes you have to bring out into the light some of the darker feelings that you have. And I've done that on several occasions. And I think there's value to that. A lot of us want to pretend that we never are scared. We never lack confidence, that we're never worried that nobody cares what we're doing, that we don't need validation and approval. We're all human. We all do. That's just the reality of the situation. I wish I could say that I was an island, but as much as I have tried, I am not. But that's a whole that's a conversation for another show. For this week, I'm going to say thank you for being here. I appreciated all your comments and the great discussion. I appreciate your support every week. I love you all for being here. It means the world to me. And I hope I put something out there today that was helpful. And next week, I will have a guest again. Yay, we're back to guests. Ricky Gardner from String Theory Fabric Art will be joining me. Should be a really fun conversation. I hope you will all come and watch that broadcast. And as I said, I thank you so much for being here. I enjoy my Wednesdays with all of you, talking to you or talking to somebody and all of the rest of you. It really means a lot to me, and I thank you so much. Thank you, Tanya. You rock, Christine. Helps not to be alone or feel alone. It totally does. And thank you, Carolyn. And thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Gusta. I appreciate it. So that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to take the "you are great" off. And I will talk to you all next week.